It's my extreme pleasure to introduce Kevin McCuistion to you this morning, and I say that truly. I've known Kevin, well, let's see, you said you were 19 years at Microsoft, probably pretty close. Yeah, coming up on 20 years. He and his wife, Kristen, joined our church, little church out in Woodinville, and I've gotten to know him over that time, and he's served in various leadership positions there, and I found him just to be a truly honest guy that really lives his faith. He walks the walk, not just talks the talk. And I think one of the biggest telling factors is, you learn a lot about a guy as a man and a father when you look at his kids. And he's got two of the best kids I've ever met. And these, Jonathan and Grace, actually give you hope for the next generation, let me tell you. So, with that, I'd say you've done a good job there, Kevin, both you and Kristen. Maybe she's a little more into that than you are. But anyway, Kevin's going to talk to us about managing up, and maybe we can come away from this with a little insight as to how we can go about our everyday job. So, Kevin, come on up.
Thanks. My daughter's here in Bellevue right now with all the DECA kids for the state DECA championships, and she's competing today at noon and at 1 o'clock to try and go to nationals for DECA. So that's DECA is a marketing organization, and Woodinville High School, where my daughter goes to school, is one of the better DECA schools around, and so she has a great coach, and very excited. She's quite gifted at marketing, super proud of her, and she was going to call me last night if she had problems with her marketing prompt that she was given. That was, what she was supposed to speak on, but I didn't expect a call, and I didn't get one because she wouldn't get a lot of help from me. I don't think. I think she'll do just great. She's a very gifted marketer, and so. Yeah, talking about our kids and employees, I think there's a lot of things in common. I think when you went around your tables and you thought about great managers and you thought about attributes of great managers you might have had, how many of you came up with something related to their expertise? They were super smart and really good at what they did. Anybody? That was a reason? Okay. How about that they were very powerful and able to, influence massive numbers of people at one time and get things done? Is that a thing? Anybody? How about somebody who was very well networked? They knew everybody and could get, hey, I know that guy. Anybody? That was your best manager? Nobody's raising their hand on any of these. One of the things did anybody have it where the person cared about you and actually looked out for you? Oh, wow. Look at that. How about that? So we learned something, didn't we? Just by that table exercise, we learned something about management. We learned that it comes down to, in a lot of cases, someone who actually knows you and cares about you and wants to help you get where you want to go. That's my very simple vision of what a good manager does. Now, there are good and developing managers in every organization. We won't call somebody bad because I'm always going to give them a shot that they can develop. But the developing managers need to learn understand that it's not about them. It's not about what they're able to do. It's not about who they know. It's not about any of those kinds of things. It's actually about how they care. And the thing we always talk about is how do you care for your employees. Today I'm going to help you think about how do you care for your boss. How do you care for your manager? How do you manage up? And so here is the definition of managing up. This is the best one I found. Managing up is a process of consciously working with your boss to obtain the best possible results for you, your boss, and your organization. This is not political maneuvering or kissing up. Rather, it is deliberate effort to bring understanding and cooperation to a relationship between individuals who often have different perspectives. Which I spelled incorrectly. Apologies. So the relationship and the cooperation is a really interesting element. I'll have a couple of thoughts for you. So I've been at Microsoft it'll be 20 years. I'll get my 20 year this summer. And I've had a lot of relationships with a lot of managers at all different levels, and I've worked with a lot of the senior people in the company over the years, and we've had a very different set of folks at various times. I'm super excited about our current set of senior people and where we're currently at, which is why I'm still there after 20 years. But I loved the previous people too. I mean, they brought what they brought, but I wouldn't say that the previous managers that I had, senior managers, were all great at caring for their organizations and their employees. And so for a while, Microsoft was a place where people came and they got stock options and they worked for 6 or 7 years on average. And then they parlayed that into a lot of money. And then they would leave the company to go do the next thing that they would do. So there are a lot of former Microsoft people all around the world who, some are in Costa Rica just hanging out, some have been startup leaders, some have ended up, you'll see them popping up all over the place. And so that was the early part of the career. So that was not a super relational time. But even in the midst of that, I had some managers who actually cared about me and helped me to develop. And so it didn't come down to the fact that the organization was good at management. It was the fact that you had managers who made a difference. And that's one of my meta points here, is that this is a one-to-one thing. This managing up thing, this is about you and your boss. This is not about you managing an organization. It's not about you changing a culture. It's about you making a connection with somebody, with a leader or a set of leaders. What you're going to find is you get very passionate. One, about the organization, what it's doing, and two, about the people you're doing it with. Think about a set of players on a football team. We think about that a little bit here in Seattle, and how they come together. Eclectic group of people, all with different agendas and different approaches, coming together for a common goal. Do you see bonding over the season between these people? Do you notice as it's going along, new people coming in all the time, new players, new coaches, lots of transition. And yet there's a common thing that happens as that process happens, as that organization evolves. It's like a microcosm of an organization happening over 16 weeks and hopefully longer. As they go through that season, and then you watch at the end and you see what's happening. And as that thing happens, you see leadership and you see people who manage down. Coaches are the ones who are most likely to manage down. But have you ever noticed how much the players and the coaches manage up? Is Pete Carroll managed on the Seattle Seahawks? Absolutely, he's managed. Who are the people who are most effective at managing Pete Carroll? The ones who have a relationship with him, or the ones who don't? I guarantee you every time it's the ones who have a relationship with him. It's the same thing with your manager. Your manager is a person. Your manager is somebody who cares about people, cares about things. Sometimes they need to be helped to care about you. And the way you do that is by caring about them. And so the relationship is at the core of managing up. That's kind of my one meta point. So if you remember nothing else, if you doze off here after a bit, that's the one thing just keep in mind. It's about that relationship, about building that management relationship. And as you do that, you're going to find that you have a lot of interesting results. So which should I choose? Managing up or managing down? Which one's the most important? Anybody? Managing up, how many? Managing down, how many? Okay. My answer? Both! You can't do just one. So forcing you to be binary, I'm sorry about that. Classic Microsoft thing. Because all we deal with is ones and zeros in the computer world. So people who only manage up lose respect from their employees. You know this, right? You think about some of that example. The people are only about power, only about networking, only about themselves. They lose respect. People only manage down can't actually get things done. They can't get things for their team because they don't have the respect. So you have to, as a person, this classic idea of middle management, everybody's a middle manager. Even a CEO of a company is a middle manager. There's somebody always, it's called the board of directors.
I thought it was my wife.
And as Jim will always remind you, classic classic, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the man is the head, but the woman is the neck, and the neck turns the head. And so yeah, we always have somebody. You're always in between sets of people, and you're always having to do this. And I think there's a misnomer about managing up. The managing up is about, back to the kissing up, or the trying to brown nose, or do things. That's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about a genuine, connected relationship. And I have cared for every manager I have worked for, even the ones that I did not like, and even some that I didn't respect. But I had a relationship, and it wasn't even that I had a relationship because I was trying to get something out of them, which is another misnomer about managing up. It was because I genuinely care about them as a person, and I want them to be successful. That's just the way I'm wired. It doesn't matter whether I like them or not. It's like I feel like that is my responsibility, is to care for people. Now, on all these personality things, I do tend on the people side versus the task side by nature, and so that helps me. It's a more natural thing for me to do. So if you're more task oriented, you might have to rewire yourself sometimes and think about the fact, hey, remember to connect. Remember in the midst of doing your job to reach out to people. If you're more of a people person, you have to remember, get the job done. Right? Don't just talk. Don't just paint vision. Go and do stuff. So everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses, but you need both. Just like you need to manage up and down. You need to actually connect with people, and you got to get the job done. So you got to find a way to balance. It's kind of the thing in all of this, sort of coming back to balance, which is the idea of balance is very popular today. So just a couple of examples from my career so far. My career started at Chevron, and I came out of Oregon State University, and I did an internship with them, and I ended up in their management development program. And we started in audit because I had an accounting and international business set of degrees. And when I went into audit, the first thing that I did was I went and I started to talk to a lot of the management, because I was based in California at the time, about how I wanted to work internationally. I had the international training. And my argument was to the senior management at the time, I built a relationship. The guy taught me how to play blackjack, taught me all of his tips. We went and played golf together. I just got to know him, just more as a relationship again. Not kissing up, just trying to get to know the senior person in the organization. And as we were doing that, I said, hey, I grew up in North Africa, and I grew up overseas, and I have a real passion for international work, that I'd like to actually do international work. And I said I'd love to do it soon, because I speak French, I speak Spanish, I can get around in Arabic and German, and I can, I'm kind of an international guy. I think I'm better off overseas than I am here in California. I think I can really make an impact on that. And he said, well, we never ever send people overseas until later on in their career, because they got to have maturity and stability. I said that's great. I totally respect you, and I'll do my time if I have to do it. But I just think that on behalf of this company, I could do so much more if I were in another context, whichever one it was. And so left it at that. Kind of a few weeks later, he came back. He says, well, you know what? You made an impact on me. I might make an exception here. There's an opportunity over in London that you could go for a 1-year assignment and go try it out, and let's see how it goes. No promises, might not turn into a thing. If it doesn't work out, no harm done, you can come back. And so I'm going to make your second rotation of your development program over in London. He said, now remember, this is an exception. Don't blow it, right? Because we don't do this. And I don't want to say, he actually said, I don't want to set a precedent. So we're just doing this unique thing for you. So delighted, a year into my Chevron tenure, I was back overseas again in London. And my 1-year assignment, cutting to the chase, turned into a 5-year assignment, because they kept extending me year after year. And I moved from audit. So it was one example of managing up, by the way, if you didn't notice that. And I moved into, I made another connection with some people as I was doing audit. Because audit, most people think it's the bad guys who are coming in to make you feel bad. My experience of audit was just building a relationship with people and helping them improve their business. I saw myself as a consultant. I came in and I was always respectful. Sometimes I had to write up some stuff that was not good. But whenever I did, I tried to give them the glass half full, give them the benefit of the doubt. Say, hey, you know what? I think if I were in your shoes, this is how I would improve this. And so I built these relationships, and as I was doing, I was traveling all over the Middle East and Africa, Great job for a single person just out of college. They're paying all my expenses. I'm saving money for business school, traveling all over the world, paid for by Chevron, doing audits in all these different locations. One of which, my favorite, if you catch me over beer sometime, I'll tell you about my time in Monte Carlo when I audited someone who had given gifts to some of our oil employees with a Scotland Yard guy that went along. So I'll tell you that story some other time. That was fun. So I'm doing all this, and I spent some time in Côte d'Ivoire in Africa because my French speaking. So I spent some time, and I met a guy named Simon who was running West African trading operations at the time. Made a connection. We would do stuff together. We go talk. Talk about our lives and our families, and just really built a good relationship. He got moved back to London, and when he came back, he started up a trading operation for Chevron, tracking the commodity trading that they do to hedge their oil. Like they have all this oil, but what happens when the market fluctuates? They have to go buy and sell futures and options to cover the backside of those oil things. And so Simon was a super great guy, made the connection. He ends up in London, and I was living in London, but I wasn't there a lot. I was only there about 20% of the time. And he calls me up. He says, "Hey, I'm starting up this operation. I know you're an audit. I know they've got you all locked into this program, but," he says, "I can talk to people if you're interested, and I have an option for you to go build a system to track all of our commodity trading." I knew nothing about databases. I knew nothing. I was a bit of a tech guy, but I was an Apple guy. I wasn't a server guy. So he called them and made an exception, and they changed the rules. And so I was able to go over into his operation, get out of the management training program, and I spent several more years doing that. And I had a great relationship with him where we just built that, and we looked out for each other. I was there helping him be successful. I built a Paradox database with people around the world. We spread it all over the place with commodity trading in Stamford, Connecticut, and San Francisco, and then over in Singapore. And we did a network at the time, which was pretty cutting edge. These days, networking is not so cutting edge. And so we did that. And as I did that, I started to fall in love with technology. And as I fell in love with technology, I realized, wow, that's really, as much as I love geology and oil and finding oil and extracting it, and refining it, and then cracking it and putting in your gas tank, so exciting, I actually love tech more. And sorry for the sarcasm there, but it really was my love. And so that's where I decided to go back to business school. So I've had 2 managing up examples so far for you, where based on that, it was best for the organization, and it was best for me, and it led me to my next step. And this is actually, by the way, the whole way my career has gone is continuing to connect as I go with people, and for them to come and bring me opportunities. Went to business school, went to Dartmouth. Microsoft called me, said, "Hey, are you interested?" I said, "No, I'm an Apple guy. I'm going to go to Apple." I talked to people that went to Apple. They said, "It's terrible. It's micromanaged, and Steve Jobs is a maniac." But I said, "But I love Apple." And I went to Microsoft, and they said, "Well, we'll empower you. We'll give you a budget. You decide what you do, and here's, this will be your charter." And I said, "That's probably more what I want to do." And so I transitioned from being an Apple person to a Microsoft person. And 20 years later, that's the rest of the story, is that I'm there. So you've kind of seen where I went in my early career, and I'm kind of doing that part because it got a lot more intentional when I got to Microsoft, in the sense that I had jobs where, when I worked in the first job, I worked with Steve Ballmer, and I had to go convince Steve Ballmer that my licensing model for servers was the right licensing model. And once I was on the chalkboard with him, and we did math camp, and he said, "No, that doesn't make sense, and what about this?" And I was able to answer his questions. He said approved, and my licensing went through, and 20 years later, that licensing model is still being used. So there's an example of where in that case, my managing up was go do math camp with Steve Ballmer and survive. But if you could survive, then you got some respect, and then you got your thing actually done. That was not a relationship per se, but it was. I was in his office, we were talking, we were working on something, and he respected me. That's different than the other ones I talked about, where I had a personal relationship, where I was personally connected to them. With Steve, it was about the way that Steve worked, and that's the way I got things done. And then later on in my career, the other example is when I became a chief of staff for my best manager I ever had, who was the leader of, he's a VP in charge of all of the marketing for servers worldwide. This man really truly cared about his family, really truly cared about his employees. And he asked me not only to be his chief of staff to develop his organization, he also asked me to put together a career development plan for his whole organization of several hundred people. And I spent a year on that job, and he parked me on the side after my chief of staff job just to go do that for his organization. He valued my skills. I had the relationship with. He respected me. I went and did something that was good for the organization. That career development model is still in place for our organization. So I see little fingerprints through the organization based on the connecting and the managing up that I did as I went through it. And then most recently, I was managing the largest partners in the world that we had with Microsoft on cloud computing, the HPs and the Dells and the Accentures and Cognizants and Wipros and all of the Indian SIs and basically all of the biggest partners in the world. And there I was working with Satya and Scott Guthrie a lot. And as I did that, the connection was me coming and explaining to them that I care about these partners, even though many of them are competitors, and that I wanted them to be successful along with us. And I think that if we could do win-win. And that was the argument that I made there. And so if you keep the mentality that people are a positive connection, that win-win is possible, and that you can actually get things done by being genuine and caring and not always agreeing, by the way. But just like in the U.S. Senate, not the campaign debate, but in the U.S. Senate, with respect, or if you really disagree with someone, with great respect, having a little civil discourse, but having an ability, a way for you to work through things and get to the best outcome because you do genuinely care for your colleague in the Senate, for example, or your colleague in the industry, or in this case, your manager. So that's kind of where that's at. So some tips on this, on managing up that I've learned over time. And I think the best view that I saw on this was the same article I quoted at the beginning, this guy, Wayne Turk, on the art of managing up. Just some things, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. Communication is at the heart of it. Make sure your manager's never surprised. I think that's probably, you guys all know that. Don't surprise your manager. So that goes back to communication, by the way. So if you communicate, there won't be as many surprises. Provide solutions, not problems. If I had to pick one thing that every senior executive I know cares about, it's that one thing. They don't want you coming and telling them how hard it is. They don't want you to come and tell them that there's a problem, this person's a problem, that thing's a problem. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear, I have solved this, or I have a proposal for you to go through. This is what I need you to do. Write this email, go to this meeting, make this phone call, do this, and we will solve this problem. I've diagnosed it, trust me. That's how we do. So that is probably, if you want to take one practical thing away from this, other than relationship, provide solutions. Every article that I've read about this says that that is the key to being successful with senior management. Bring them a solution. And I caught myself as I started thinking about this. Oh yeah, the other day I brought my boss a problem. Well, no wonder she glazed over and kind of went, okay, yeah, I hear you. And then she kind of, what are you going to do about it? Because she wanted me to do something about it. She's not going to jump in and say, "Well, I'll take that one. I don't have anything else to do. I'm going to go solve your problem for you because I care that much about you." No, that's not what they're going to do. So, be honest and trustworthy. I think that's super important. Be loyal and committed. They are aware whether or not you are a trustworthy person and whether you have their back. Senior manager, are way smarter than you give them credit for. And they are also people, and they have senses, and they are aware of a lot of things, most of them. Understand your manager's perspective and know what matters to them. Understand what they prefer. How do they like things? Do they prefer things in email? Do they want you to give them a list? Do they want a one-time-a-week update? Or do they want constant flow of communication? Do they want you to have a meeting with people? How do they want you to manage them? And how do they want you to manage the people that are around you? Knowing your own style. Hey, I'm a people person. I walk by and I drop by. I'm a drop-by guy. All my team knows, hey, here comes Kevin. Sometimes I'm chipper and sometimes I'm really churning on something, but I'm coming by. But there's some people that work for me who prefer for me to send them an email. And over time, I've realized I need to send them an email first before I drop by. Because if I just drop by on the spot and ask them the question at that point, and they've not had a time to prepare and process, they're going to feel very uncomfortable and not give me the best answer. So for some people that are more, what's it called? What's the extrovert? Introverts. We don't use this language at Microsoft, so I got to remember what it is. An introvert, someone who's more introverted who likes to process. You see them, their door is closed all the time, or they have a headphone on in their cubicle, or these folks are sending you a message that says, "I need to process and work through things before I answer something." That person, give them advance notice, and then when they bring you something, they're going to bring you something really good, really well thought out, really powerful. You're going to get great insight from the person. If your boss is that way, then manage them accordingly, right? And then use your manager's strengths. Hey, I need you to do this. Do something naturally. If they're a connector, use the connecting. If they're a writer, use the writing. Use the thing that they do well. They'll enjoy it because you're asking them to do something they do. But if you know your boss doesn't want to make a phone call, hates making phone calls, don't ask your boss to make a phone call. If your boss doesn't like composing emails, don't ask them to compose an email. Write one for them. Here's the email I need you to send. I put in a draft, I put the attachments. Anybody else you want to do, please just hit send. That's proposing a solution, not bringing them a problem and asking them to go churn on it and write it, and they hate it because I hate writing emails. And so this is how another thing to think about. Recognize their weaknesses and compensate. Show them that you have their back. Be aware of their hot buttons, and you know your manager's hot buttons. Everybody knows their manager's hot buttons. Like, you know what will set them off on something. And part of it is no surprises, by the way. So some of these are interrelated. And so think about those. And then ask for feedback. How can I help you be more successful? Have you ever asked your manager that? How can I help you get what you need done? What more can I do to help you be successful? I've asked my managers this for the last 15 years. At some point, someone gave me this coaching point. Great coaching points. Like, go ask them how you can help them be successful. It's been gold. It's gold, I'm telling you. They love the fact that you're coming and proposing not only a solution, but you're proposing that you're available. Because a lot of times they go, who's available? And everybody, phone. So that's part of it too. And then don't go over your manager's head or behind their back. That's just common sense. You'll get killed if you do that. So imagine if you noticed a project needed to be done, something that hadn't been assigned to anybody. You got all the materials together, created the written plan. You notified your manager that you'd be completing the project at a specific time and date with the help of other people. You've already recruited these people. And then you completed the project and wrote a quick summary of the results. What do you think your manager would do? Thoughts? Other than have a heart attack. What do you think they would do? Would they respond positively to that?
Depends.
Right? Depends, and what would it depend on?
Depends on the culture of the company.
That's true. That's true. Here in the U.S., this is a U.S.-centric one. If I were in England, I would respect the channel. There's certain protocols in other countries. So, very good point. And in Africa, there are different ways of doing things. Here in the U.S., this is kind of the default template for the perfect employee. And it's actually not that hard to do this. When you see opportunities, you go fill gaps, and then you get them done. The only question you have in your mind is, how do I do that and still have a life balance and not be a workaholic? That goes back to those earlier steps I gave you, knowing your boss, what's important to them, and doing things that really make a difference. Once you do, they're not going to abuse it. Most of them will not. Now, some you have to watch out for, but for some of them, it never hurts, even if you don't respect a boss. Going and getting something that's better for the organization. It's better for you. You'll feel a sense of accomplishment. You'll show your leadership. They'll remember that you led something soup to nuts, and when the next manager position comes available, they might actually consider you for it because you've shown an ability to manage without authority. These are all things. That's why I'm just teeing this up just as an idea. And again, this is just some observations. I'm not perfect at this, but these are just some thoughts. So you're at a group where we're talking about God, and I actually think the good question here is who was the best at managing up in history? And I think you know the punchline I'm going to say, which is I actually think that Jesus Christ was the best managing up person in history. And I will not refer to my own opinion on this. I'll refer to some writing in the Holy Scriptures where this is what is said about him. This is him saying in his prayer to his disciples how they should pray. Our Father, his key manager in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done as earth is in heaven. I'm aligned with you. I care about your priorities. I want what you want to be done, and I'm aligned with you. And then later it gets harder for him because later he says, hey, boss, if you're willing, I don't really want that assignment. I don't want to go to the cross. But hey, I'm aligned with you, not my will, yours be done. And then another writer, the Apostle Paul, about this says kind of in retrospect in the book of Philippians in the Bible, says, in your relationships with one another have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. So this is the ideal employee. This is your ideal manager up and manager down. Think about the disciples and what they did as a result of that. 12 very homely, very plain disciples and a collection of other related followers who went off and ended up all over the world. And how should I manage? Just again from the scriptures, when Jesus was asked, his answer to this was there were two main things you need to do. Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor. And I think whether or not you're a Christian, I think that's good advice. I think you need to love your Creator, and then I think you need to love others. And in my experience, I can't love others if I don't love my Creator. Same thing if I'm in a company. If I'm not in line with my manager, I can't manage effectively. Same principle. So that's the end. So thanks very much for your time.